Okay, today is December 18th, 2024. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard, and you're watching The Pipeline. This will be our last episode before the Christmas break, but don't worry, we'll be right back to you early in the new year. I'm joined, as always, by my colleagues and good friends, Western Standard opinion editor Nigel Hannaford.
Well, it's good to be here.
And Western Standard senior Alberta columnist Cory Morgan.
Happy holidays.
Normally we do 3 topics. We're just doing 2 today because there's just has there been anything in the news?
Can't think of a darn thing.
You
have to turn it on.
Oh,
at some
wait a
point.
minute.
Didn't miss. Did Trudeau resign? No.
No.
Must be thinking.
Trudeau's government's in complete meltdown crisis, and Trump is talking about annexing Canada. Maybe we should talk about those things.
Well, if we ran out of things, Rachel Gilmore got fired again, too.
Oh, you know what? At least someone did lose a job. Okay, well, that's what we'll be talking about. Donald Trump began over dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Justin Trudeau, ribbing him about Canada becoming the 51st state, and he can be its governor. That is seemingly escalated. Is this a thing? Is this actually a thing, or is this Trump just bullshitting? He's a bullshitter, and he likes to troll. But I'm starting to wonder now. I got an eyebrow up. So what we're going to talk about is Donald Trump just joking about Canada joining the United States? Can't believe I'm even saying it. We're going to talk about it like it's even a half-serious idea. But before that, we're going to talk about Justin Trudeau on death watch. His prime ministership has entered its final terminal phase. He is sitting in hospice at this point. The government is circling the drain. I don't know how many more metaphors I could fit into this, but each of them is a pleasant thought at this time. It began early Monday morning. Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, his right-hand woman, abruptly and shockingly tendered her resignation. You all know, everyone already knows the story by now, so just leave it at some absolutely gargantuan political miscalculations and arrogance from Justin Trudeau has led to this point. And, you know, at this point, you're wondering if he can last longer than a head of lettuce.
Is that what that lettuce is doing in our canteen?
It is.
Okay.
It is. I haven't decided if we do a live stream with it yet, but we have a fresh head of lettuce in there with, some tomato eyes and a pepper mouth. That is what it is doing there, staring at you. I'll start with you, Nigel. Trudeau has had some disasters before. He has had career-ending scandals that would end anyone's career. Blackface, SNC Lavalin and Jody Wilson-Raybould, Aga Khan. The list is so long, and he always survives. Possibly because he just holds on long enough until Canadians see a squirrel and focus on something else. And we don't forget about it, but enough Canadians seem to forget about it. And he just goes on. Is he going to survive? And I'm not talking about the general election. We already know he's done. The ballots have effectively already been counted. He is done. He is going to be out of power, and he's going to be out of power in a spectacular way, at a minimum, by the next election. Can he survive? Does Justin Trudeau make it to the election?
Depends really when the election comes, doesn't it? If you were to, let's just sort of back up to October. They just lost a safe seat in Montreal. Just lost another one in BC on Monday, same day as all this was happening. So you have a parliamentary session, bookended, as somebody said, by election losses. Now, in the first one, there were people in the party starting to question his leadership. And I think they may have been able to get 20 or 30 MPs, Liberal MPs, to say, Mr. Trudeau, it's time to consider your future outside the Liberal Party. So That number he managed to just dismiss and carry on. Now the inside scoop is that it's more like half his caucus are calling for him to resign. Now they have no mechanism to do it. There isn't one.
No, the constitutionally can, but they didn't take the reasonable route of invoking the Reform Act.
Well,
they took away their easiest route, but they can constitutionally remove him. It's just a lot more bloody.
I'm not sure any of them realize that piece of British tradition is still available to them.
Mhm.
Certainly the charter route, which the Conservatives adopted, the NDP adopted, which allows the caucus to get together and say, we've had enough of these guys, or this guy. That's not available. So the question comes, can he stand being placed in some sort of quarantine where nobody answers his phone calls, nobody speaks to him, nobody smiles at him, nobody claps when he gets up to answer questions and ribbing from Pierre Poilievre. Basically being sent to Coventry, as we used to say. And at any rate, that is a most uncomfortable situation to be in. No government business gets done. Not that there's much getting done anyway. And it just becomes a matter of waiting for Mr. Singh to say, all right, I've had enough of being teased about keeping this guy in power. When the budget comes up, I'm going to vote no. And then it'll all be over. So I think that unless Mr. Singh has got a different agenda, and a highly cynical one, this can't go on past the next budget, but it could go on that long, especially if he were to prorogue, in which case he wouldn't have to show up and he wouldn't have to look at these people or listen to them.
Cory, so Jagmeet Singh has finally, he ripped up the agreement, remember? He ripped it up, he said, in the fall when he realized that being tethered to this corpse was very, perhaps bad for his political prospects. He ripped it up, but then continued to vote confidence in the Trudeau government. The day of Chrystia Freeland's resignation, he comes out and says, now I'm serious. Justin Trudeau should resign. He seemingly did not predict what the very first question and every single subsequent question to that would be, which is, well, are you going to vote non-confidence in him now? And it was like watching a Vietnamese torture chamber. They're pulling his nails back, and he still won't say, I'll vote non-confidence in him. They sent one of his lieutenant, I think the NDP House leader out, Peter Julian, who, after much fingernail prying, said, well, if Trudeau is still prime minister and hasn't resigned, and we're still in this bad situation by, I don't know, February or March, then all options are on the table. Well, what happens in February or March?
There seems to be some sort of pension change, if I recall.
What? Yeah. What is it? What is it that happens in February and March?
February the 25th, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Right between February and March, Jagmeet Singh's pension vests, and he becomes eligible for that lifetime pot of money. I mean, he is pretty much admitting it at this point. He is not going to bring down the Trudeau government until he gets his pension. I actually think we should just change the pension rules. You get a pension no matter how long you serve, because it gets bigger the longer you serve. Just make everyone instantly vest, because, I mean, this kind of stuff has played a role in the past, but hasn't been so naked. And now Jagmeet Singh is admitting it. So I don't think Jagmeet Singh is actually going to bring down this government until his pension vests. But it seems to me, regardless of what happens, resign or stay, Cory, his best prospect is probably to just prorogue at this point. Prorogue, for those of you who don't speak parliamentary at home, is just essentially it suspends Parliament. Everything ends. Committees and they can't investigate anything.
It's just a hard reboot.
It's a hard reboot, and all bills restart. So if he prorogues, that means Parliament's actually not going to be coming back at any time. It's a play for time. If he's going to resign and have a leadership race to replace him, he's got to prorogue. Or if he doesn't want to get defeated immediately, he's got to prorogue. What's Trudeau do here?
I don't know anymore. I don't. I mean, I question his sanity to a degree. I really do. I think the pressure's gotten to him. He's not thinking rationally. He's not acting rationally. I really thought when all the year-end interviews were canceled, I thought, okay, here we go. Because if you were trying to hold on for your political life, well, here's your opportunity to give your heartfelt plea to everybody on why you're going to be better. And you got rid of those. But then I watched him at the Christmas party for caucus, and he was just all smiles and pretending nothing happened. If he leaves, it's not going to be on his own accord. He has to be kicked out. His caucus has to do something, as bloody as it may be. And I think they're finally starting to realize it. Like with Freeland, this was his most loyal supporter. He had not only tried to humiliate her with a ridiculous firing and then expecting her to still present his, as you've said, a steaming pile of a budget before leaving. So make you wear all that crap that you took on my behalf.
Next day.
And then I'm going to still have you fired. It also signals to every caucus member and every cabinet member, he thinks nothing of you. He doesn't care about your loyalty. He will not reward you. He doesn't appreciate your loyalty. If he will do that to her, he will do that to any of you. He is not a man worth following. He is not a man who values your effort, your time, your sacrifice. They've got to be having those discussions now and saying, this is it. This has got to stop.
Well, I think they've been having those discussions for a long time, Corey.
Oh, certainly. But this displayed it in full length. I mean, he didn't even meet her face to face. He did it over Zoom. They were in the same city. Like, that's cowardice and disrespect of a level that is beyond I even thought he was capable of.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think he sent a text, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, what would be the mechanism by which they would, short of 150 MPs walking into his office and saying, you've got to go?
Yeah, because they didn't sign on to the Reform Act. So the easy route is not immediately available. But I mean, they can, as we kind of said earlier, he can be neutered. You know, you can.
There is a way. And so the media has been totally missing this. Now, there's generally two ways the leader of a party is removed, federally and to an extent provincially. One is the way, say, Jason Kenney was removed, a vote by the members. But that's often not available. The Liberal Party's constitution, the members don't even get to vote on removing the leader of the party if the leader of the party is the head of the government. They only get to vote if they're in opposition. That's not a very good idea. There needs to be a peaceful and relatively bloodless way to remove a party leader by the grassroots, and there also needs to be a way to remove a leader at the caucus level, which is the root of responsible government in the Westminster parliamentary system. The leader of a government, or the leader of the government, has to have the confidence of the House and of the governing caucus. Opposition caucuses can do this too. So we talked about the Reform Act, piece of legislation that merely codified powers that MPs have always had as long as there's been a House of Commons in Old England. But they still have the power to do this. And the media, I think, has been completely missing the point on this. It's more complicated. It's a lot more bloody because the Liberals were too cowardly to vote to give themselves this power after the last election. Every caucus votes on it after the election. They were too cowardly to do it. They were on Team Trudeau, not Team Canada or Team Liberal. But there is a way to do it. And that would be to get a letter, or for lack of a better term, a petition, signed by a majority of the governing Liberal caucus. And it would have to state in that letter that they've lost confidence in the Prime Minister. And here is a nominated successor. That could be an interim person, and then they could hold the leadership race. But here is a nominated successor. Here is, I don't know, Stephen Guilbeault. Stephen Guilbeault will be an interim Prime Minister, and he has the support of a majority of the caucus. They take that to the Governor General. The Governor General would at least have to give it serious weight to appoint that new Prime Minister, removing Justin Trudeau, or else go to Justin Trudeau and say, you need to immediately test the confidence of the House of Commons or dissolve Parliament. Those are your options. That is the way the Liberals could do it. Justin Trudeau's way around it would be able to say, as soon as I smell anyone signing that letter,
He'll dissolve
I'm calling an election, and he retains that right. Either way, there's no good options for any Liberals. Trudeau, Freeland, backbenchers, they're all screwed no matter what they do because they waited too long. But it is not true that the Liberal caucus has no way to remove him. That is the way to do it. Just Justin Trudeau retains the right to press the big red button and nuke them all.
Yeah, well, and I mean, if I were in his shoes, assuming even that vanity and self-interest and whatnot, the closest I could see him coming out of this with a shred of dignity and pride would be maybe to negotiate with them and say, fine, I'm going to do it, but I want to stay on until the new leader. Because then you got to appoint your buddies, do your things, have your patronage and step out. But again, I don't think he's rational anymore. I don't think he sees that out as a reason.
Well, to the point about pride, this is really, you're zeroing in on the heart of the problem. Mr. Trudeau does not see himself as a liberal. As far as he's concerned, this is a Trudeau government. It is not a liberal government. He is not invested in the history and the future of the party. So in actual fact, he could be evicted from office and walk out of there still with his head high, thinking they weren't worthy of me.
Yeah, I could believe that, yeah.
Because he has such an incredible sense. Like, we don't agree with his mission, which is all about changing the nature of Canada and climate change and a number of things. We'll go into it another time. But that's where his head is at. He thinks he's the hero here. And finally, the people have just shown their cowardice.
Didn't know what they're good for them.
And, if he leaves and destruction, après moi le déluge, So, but I think that's the nature of the man.
Yeah, it's as good as explanation as I can see. Like I said, that's been the hard part I've been having with this last couple of days, is I keep trying to apply reason where reason isn't existing. And so I'm never going to find a satisfactory conclusion. I'm never going to be able to predict what this guy is going to do, because I can't put myself into that mind. I can put myself into the mind of a leftist and so on, assuming that they're still rational, but he just doesn't seem to be behaving that well.
Well, just a moment ago, you actually stole my parting shot when you made the remark about how he dismissed Chrystia Freeland.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. I'll think of another one. But the fact of the matter is that tells you that he lacks basic judgment, because you just don't give somebody a job to do on Monday and say, by the way, once you're done, you're fired. What did he think?
Well, I think it was Robin Urbach had the best analogy that, it's like when you break up with someone, to say, can you please still come to Christmas dinner and act normal in front of the family?
Yeah,
then we'll part ways. But you got to come and act normal in front of the family in the meantime. And she wasn't willing to eat that turd sandwich. I want to just come back to this thing just a little bit. I think at this point, Singh has removed himself from the calculation. There is a very, very good chance Singh will never actually have voted non-confidence in Justin Trudeau once for the duration of this entire parliament, because I think there's a good chance Trudeau's just going to prorogue. He has to prorogue. But then again, we come against the budget. We might thankfully get an election before October next year, the scheduled election date, if this was a majority government.
Well, the first thing after prorogation is a speech from the throne, which is a confidence.
Yeah, but you can prorogue for a long time.
Yeah.
You can keep it out for quite a long time.
You'd see marching on the Hill, I think, finally, if he tried to drag it beyond spring. But
yeah, but then at that point, no one can vote non-confidence. His own caucus can't really vote non-confidence. Singh can't vote non-confidence. And I don't think Singh will. And actually, I think this is what Singh wants. Singh doesn't want to have to stand up again when the House would come back in late January and continue to vote confidence in Trudeau, even now when his own caucus has lost confidence in him effectively. He doesn't want to have to do that. Trudeau will be doing Singh a favor for his pension if he prorogued, because then Singh doesn't have to stand up every day and say, Trudeau should resign, but I'm going to vote to keep him in office.
Well, and it goes beyond a pension, I think, too. I mean, I know that bugs Singh the most when people point it out, but he also drives a Maserati and wears a watch that's worth a year's salary for most of us.
But it's a nice chunk of cash. It's a nice chunk of cash for the rest of his life.
It certainly is. But I mean, also his party's broke and they're low in the polls. I mean, if he was, if their party had a couple million in the bank and they were sitting up looking like they're going to win a bunch of seats, he'd be willing to go, because even then you're thinking you're going to renew
his own seat.
Exactly. Right. So there's more to it than just the pension. They're facing just as much obliteration as the Liberals if they go to the polls. How do you run a campaign on $200,000? It's not going to go well for them.
Well, you have to do what the Liberal government would do, is borrow money.
Yeah, they just paid off their debt for the last election.
Well, let's turn to some of the more the fallout from this whole Scheisse show. Some of it's actually been pretty good. So just yesterday, word came in that the Liberals, kind of out of nowhere, it seems, gave up on their emissions cap. The emissions cap in the electricity grid. I think they were, they've been trying to get all herd the cats of the premiers together for a Team Canada approach. And then you've got Danielle Smith and Scott Moe sitting at the table. First words out of their mouth is, F you. You're screwing us worse than Donald Trump ever could. We're not on your team. We're not going to pull your chestnuts out of the fire. Put some cash on the table. We need some table stakes here. We need to see you're serious before we're going to get on board. And I liken this to, I don't know who I was talking with yesterday on the newsroom about it, but this is a hostage negotiation. So when someone's got a bunch of hostages, the hostage negotiator from the FBI comes out and says, okay, well, before we negotiate, you got to release one hostage. Show you're serious, show a little goodwill. Now, the Liberals still have a ton of hostages on Alberta, a ton of Alberta hostages, but they released the hostage yesterday in lifting the emissions cap. I think that comes from a combination of the crisis facing the government from the pending Trump tariffs and the meltdown of this government, that they need to buy some breathing room from two premiers who are ready to cut this government's throat. At the same time, I think there could be political fallout in this, because I know one guy who's probably not very happy, and that's Stephen Guilbeault, who is, he's loony. He's totally Looney Tunes. But to his credit, in a weird way, he is a principled politician, and that he actually believes what he's doing. He's not just there for a pension. That guy, I trust him. I believe him when he says he thinks the world ends if he doesn't tax my drive to work in the morning. I think he generally believes that. This emissions cap was dearly important to him. This is a pretty big climb down for the government, Corey.
Oh yeah, the Green Jesus is going to be very upset. As you said, he's a true believer. He's an ideologue. The pragmatism on the part of the government, they're scrambling. They got fires in every direction. If they can at least just pacify a couple premiers, it's a couple less things on their plate while they try to figure out what the heck they're doing on anything else. But then infuriating a loyalist like Guilbeault could also backfire on them. This is an ideologue. He doesn't care about the pension. He doesn't care about staying in longer. And that's all Trudeau needs is Guilbeault now turning on him, which potentially could happen.
What do you make of the fact that it was Wilkinson, the Enercan minister, who actually came out and made the announcement?
Well, it's because, of course, there's no way Guilbeault was going to do it.
So I guess the question is, does Guilbeault go next? So as soon as I heard this, my first thought was, Guilbeault could go. But I haven't heard it, but in our newsroom, I was told that Guilbeault has been on the radio saying, oh, well, I guess.
When does his pension vest?
I think he's good by now. He's been in a while.
No, but he didn't come in Trudeau's original majority. He was recruited later on. I'm not sure. Now, he has a better chance of keeping his seat than even Jagmeet Singh. He's Island of Montreal Liberal.
Be one of the 10.
That is, if the Liberals have 10 seats left in Canada, 7 of them will be on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Now, his seat is probably still, he's supposed to be in a seat that is just not even in contention. It will be in contention. He could lose his seat. The Liberals they're looking at a 1993 Kim Campbell-style apocalypse. But there'll be a few. He might be, but also, who wants to serve at that point? Really? Yeah, I remember after the 2015 election in Alberta, the poor PC sitting in the corner, reduced to a small third place. God, they looked miserable. Now, there was still a path out because eventually we united those parties with Wild Rose and came back. But man, they were an unhappy bunch. No one wants to serve in that. Elsie Wayne and Jean Charest in 1993 was a bad existence. But anyway, that's a ways around. Nigel, I know you have no great insight into the warped mind of Stephen Guilbeault, but how do you think there's now a risk that Guilbeault or others could jet?
Of course, I have an insight into his warped mind. We are yin and yang, the reverse and the obverse. We're just as deeply principled as each other, just believing completely different things.
Fair point.
I think that it's not, but I think that Mr. Guilbeault will accommodate himself to the situation for as long as it makes sense in his mind to do so. But ultimately, he has seen the writing on the wall. This government is turning its back on what he has fought for. Carbon capture, excuse me, clean fuels, a cap on emissions in the national grid, everybody driving electric cars. That's not going to happen. So I think he's probably just, I'll make my exit when it's a good time, and not at a time when I cut my own throat doing it. So he can't be happy. I'm actually surprised that we haven't heard something from his office already, but maybe he's just a more thoughtful guy than I gave him credit for. And
maybe politics is not quiet in Ottawa right now. Parliament may be finally done for the year. Rest in peace. But I don't think the politics are done. We have our some of us have a little Christmas vacation here. I fear we may be back in at some point over the break.
One thing about which may cause Mr. Guilbeault to stay his hand, it concerns me that in celebrating the fact that, we don't have to meet zero emissions by 2035, we still accept the fact that we're going to apparently meet them in 2050. So his idea remains intact. It is the details that have changed a little.
But let's keep in mind, all of these things the Liberals are announcing, none of them matter. None of them matter. It's like me declaring myself a prophet for a religion I know nothing about or something. These guys can announce anything they want. They announced another big gun ban the other week. You know what gun owners did? Shrug their shoulders.
The government's not just lame anymore. The legs have been cut right off it. I mean, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. As I put in my column today, related to our next discussion, Trump isn't even sworn in as president yet, but he's calling all the shots. And Trudeau isn't even an ex-prime minister yet, and he's already not calling any of the shots. He has no power. He is done. We essentially don't have a government, which in a sense is kind of a good thing.
Nobody moves, nobody gets hurt.
Well, that's I think that's a good segue to our next topic. I don't know how to treat this topic, but I think we got to talk about it. This began with Donald Trump's tweets that he's going to slap a big 25% tariff on Canadian and Mexican goods unless some things got fixed with the borders and illegals and drugs and things. Not mentioning some of the other big issues he's got, like defense. Defense is a huge one that could very reasonably see a tariff slapped against us. And we really wouldn't even have anything legitimate to say in response. We'd be like, yeah, kind of our free riding. So we would have no defense, no pun intended, but we have no defense against his arguments against our defense spending. Began with that. Trudeau flies down to Mar-a-Lago. They have dinner. It's apparently nice, but Trump kind of teases Trudeau saying, hey, if you can't take the tariff, maybe you should just become the 51st state. And hey, you could be its governor. That was a joke. Someone from the Liberal or the Trump side leaked that out. I'm starting to think it was the Trump side. First, I thought it was maybe the Trudeau side trying to rile up anti-Trump stuff. I'm starting to think it was the Trump side, because soon after that became news, you saw Trump tweeting, making fun, trolling, teasing, and in particular denigrating and disrespecting Justin Trudeau. He posted a picture of himself standing beside a Canadian flag, looking like a conqueror, overlooking the Matterhorn. Now, that's a famous mountain in Switzerland. I think it was meant to be the Rocky Mountains.
Maybe Assiniboine. They're similar looking.
Yeah, but I think that was the Matterhorn.
It was, yes.
Yeah, but I think looking out over what I think they thought was the AI thought was the Rockies, at least. And then other tweets calling him Governor Trudeau, and you talk about the 51st state, and this has gone on. Eric Trump joining in, hashtag Canada 51st state. And at first I think it was just kind of a mega trolling, shit posting kind of thing, having fun, rah America. It's continuing on, and it even continued on. I think it was maybe I'm mistaken. I think it was 3 a.m. last night. Trump goes on Truth Social and then that auto post to Twitter X. He chimed in on the Chrystia Freeland thing, saying, good riddance, she won't be missed. Fired by Governor Trudeau. Again, talking about 51st. And then last night, tweeting again, there's many Canadians who want to join. I don't think he's talked to many Canadians. I don't think this is very top of mind. Canadians clamoring to join the United States, but they're unhappy. Canadians well, pay less taxes and have better defense.
We'll have
Become
First
the
and
51st
Second
state.
Amendment rights. That's what we want.
Yeah. I mean, those would be pretty nice.
Like a 25th Amendment.
Yeah. So anyway, there's like 5 or 6 statements now from Trump talking about Governor Trudeau and 51st state stuff. And look, the Trump haters, people with Trump derangement syndrome, the problem is they take everything he says literally. If he says something that's not true, they think it's a lie. They say something that is true, it's a threat. When in fact, this man is he's a bullshitter. And he's ribbing, he's trolling. But sometimes he does troll, or the analogy I was using, he's a bullshitter. Sometimes he throws bullshit against the wall to see what sticks. That's triable. And yesterday, I was 100% sure this is just Trump bullshitting. He's trolling. Now I'm only 99% sure. Start with you, Nigel. Do you think there is anything at all to this beyond purely just weakening Trudeau's hand because he knows Trudeau's weak?
So, Derek, I actually don't think there is anything to it. I do think that Trump is, you call him a bullshitter. A lot of people call him a bully. I think he has detected weakness in Justin Trudeau, and heaven knows we saw it first. So he is doing some psychological warfare here to, as you put it, weaken him prior to the negotiations. And he's having fun doing it. Now, the only thing about that, which could backfire and may in fact have sad consequences here in Canada, is much as I have enjoyed the persiflage and the teasing, because I don't care for Mr. Trudeau very much, and I do kind of like Trump, so I'm happy to see that there comes a point at which even somebody like me is going to say, okay, fine, got the joke, that's enough. We are a country. We're a serious entity, and you don't get to have my sympathy in making those kinds of jokes anymore. It was great for the first week. And what the sad consequence that I'm referring to is that if it gives Mr. Trudeau a chance to step forward as a champion of national Canadianism, Canadian nationalism, he actually has something good to go to the public with in an election. I am your protector against Mr. Trump. I'm not saying it'll work, but it's something that he could use. So I think Mr. Trump would do us all a favor if he changed the channel.
I get what Nigel's saying, Corey, but well, first of all, I don't think Canada is a serious national entity at this point. Canada is an international laughingstock among friends and foes. I get, that he's wanted to play the anti-Trump card. That's what they were planning on, but now they're so weak. I don't think the Liberals can, because if they do, Trump, he might be a bullshitter, but you can also sometimes tell when he's serious, and he can't bite back that hard. I'm inclined to generally think this is a joke, that maybe he's pushing a little far, but as he's pushed far now, we're over a week of this. Actually, the original joke was like December 2nd or 3rd when this first started, and this has gone on and on and on. And I'm wondering, like, okay, is he taking the joke too far now, or is he planting a flag here? So I'm going to pretend to take this seriously for a moment. I take it 1% seriously now. I took it 0% seriously a day ago, but I take it 1% seriously right now. Trump is in his last term, so any electoral fallout that would come from hypothetically a super mega country of, also let's say, like, in this crazy world, Canada would not be a state. It would be 5, 6, or 10 states or something. There's just no way it would come in as one. But either way, it would alter the electoral math that for a few cycles would probably advantage the Democrats. But Trump is done. His legacy doesn't need to be another Republican elected. This gets your face on Mount Rushmore. The Louisiana Purchase was previously the largest increase in American territory, doubling its size. And Canada is how many dozens of times bigger than the Louisiana Purchase? It would, so in my column today, I talk about him as a bullshitter. And, he's gone around saying, I'm the greatest president, better than Lincoln, better than Washington. He doesn't. I don't think he actually means that. That's just him being him. But if he did hypothetically pull off something this crazy, that's Mount Rushmore worthy. That gets you in the pantheon of the greats.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe in his kind of weird mind, he could see that as a coup. But
Well, that's what I'm asking for. Not the feasibility of this, but do you think there is anything in Trump's head that's actually seriously contemplating this at all?
I think maybe daydreaming in the bathtub, but he's still enough of a realist to know that he's got enough irons in the fire before doing that he would actually move on it. I think some of it is a bit strategic. It's really destabilizing an already unstable country when you're looking for a whole new negotiation on a new deal. But there's consequences that are going to start coming. And it's as Nigel said, eventually, I mean, people find it's one thing to disrespect Trudeau, but now we're getting nation to nation, you're starting to disrespect Canada. And that can sour a relationship that's been a good, peaceful, prosperous one for both of us for a long, long time. Another part of his tweet that not enough people mention, and he's been said a few times too, is we're subsidizing Canada $100 billion a year.
Yeah,
which is a load of crap.
It is.
But I've been attacked on X, so that's nothing new for me. But by American followers and such, oh, you parasites, we're sick of shoring you Canadians. You got to remember some of Trump's followers. Yeah. And they're taking this on thinking, you mean I'm paying tax dollars to those Canadians? Yeah. They take his crap seriously.
They are subsidizing us with our defense. But that's not what he's
that's not what he's talking about.
He's not even talking about
He's taking what we're talking about as a trade deficit, and he's expanding even beyond that and bloating it. I'm just saying it was lighthearted teasing, as some are dismissing it as, are starting to cause actual rooted divisions. And that can be problematic even once Trudeau's gone. And it's not good for relations between our countries. And I worry about that. That's a consequence that I don't think maybe even he's thinking about that might come from this. But, the Trump following, the MAGA bunch, they take his stuff as gospel. And if they think that those darn dirty Canadians are going to, blow up the Baldwin's house, and they are actually, taking money out of the pockets of American taxpayers, it hurts us.
So, again, just amuse me with the this wild hypothetical that say Trump was serious. The Republicans would be electorally disadvantaged for a few cycles until things reorient, and then it'd probably come back to the 50-50 split that America is in. But Republicans would back it because it's manifest destiny. It's making America super great again, greater than it's ever been. And Democrats would support it because, well, they bring in a bunch of voters that are to the left of the current American center. So that'd be good for them. So America would go for it. And I just don't think Americans really thought about it very much until the last week or so. Let's talk about it on the Canadian side. Polls show there's like 10 or 15% of Canadians that favor it. That's higher than I would expect.
It's higher than real. Like last year I went on a speaking tour. I hit a couple of dozen towns. I was selling books and speaking to independence-minded crowds. These are people this is the most curated group of non-confederation type people you're going to find. And one of the things one of the other speakers would do at every one of those meetings was actually poll the room by hands. What would you like to see if you left Canada? An independent Alberta, West with 5 provinces or 4 provinces, or joining the USA? You were lucky to get 1% wanted to join the United States. So even in that room, I mean, I know people are being reactionary right now, and we're seeing some of those larger numbers.
Yeah,
there's not a realistic appetite.
But also keep in mind, this is not just the West or Alberta here. This is Ontario.
Oh yeah, it would even get weaker when you get over there.
But now the numbers do include out there.
Yeah.
Either way, it's very small. It's higher than I would expect.
Yeah,
but it's small. Trump's saying great numbers. It's not the case. But could he force it if he wanted to? And I do think he could. If he decided he wanted to do this, and he could probably get both parties in the States to get on it. Now, the only things that stop any U.S. president could force union between these countries if they wanted to without military force. It would be entirely unnecessary and unproductive to use military force. They don't need to. They could bring in massive tariffs and other measures that could bring us down to a Great Depression level economic apocalypse. They could do it tomorrow if they really wanted to. The only things that stop them is it'll hurt them too, but it'll hurt them a hell of a lot less than us, but it'll hurt them. And diplomatic niceties. Diplomatic niceties is not a term I really associate with Donald Trump. if he wanted to do this, and even if Canadians wanted no part of it, how long would the Canadian public be willing to endure a Great Depression, the bankruptcy of the federal government, and then the end of the welfare state that comes with that? They're saying, well, we want our universal health care. You don't get universal health care if the federal government goes bankrupt. You don't get any of that stuff. The American welfare state all of a sudden looks a lot more generous than the Canadian one. If a U.S. president was truly determined to, they could do this without firing a bullet. Nigel, do you think a determined U.S. president could force this if they truly wanted to?
40 million illegal aliens to go with the 20 they've already got and they're trying to get rid of? Well,
I don't think we'd be considered illegal aliens, but
we might consider ourselves illegal aliens. You know, Derek, I mean, it's a fun idea to play with. I don't buy it myself. I don't have the same sense of.
I take it 1% seriously.
Yeah.
I give it a 1%.
Yeah, no.
But I'm saying a U.S. president, if they're truly determined to,
Well,
I just don't see anything they could stop them.
Look, you've got a country of 360 million people against a country of 40. In the end, they can do whatever they like. Of course they can. But I don't think they would have the domestic support for it. The Republicans would not be as. I mean, they might like to have Alberta and maybe Saskatchewan, but I don't think they're going to want Quebec. And I don't think they're
we
going to
don't
want
want
Quebec.
It's up for sale again.
Cut those guys loose.
France.
You've got no. They would know that all they would be getting would be 40 million people who didn't really want to participate in this. Because
But that's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking that. I'm saying if they were truly determined to, could they do it
well, I mean, of course they
without firing a shot?
That's the question. Well, how long would
we be willing?
bankrupt
How long would we
Canada
be willing to accept bankruptcy and depression level economy to withstand it?
But I mean, that would be an act of economic war too. If we're going down the road of, speculation, and there are other nations on the planet stronger than Canada. I mean, if he's getting that insular, you better be ready for trade sanctions to come from everybody in Europe, possibly parts of Asia.
Do you think anybody's going to stick their neck out to help Canada?
If you see expansionism on the part of the United States,
I don't see it.
China would come up with a loan for us? They'd want a lot in return.
Oh,
but
yeah.
They would
sign your soul to the devil there.
Yeah, you certainly would. And there are certainly Canadian leaders who would rather do that than reverse the results of
And
the
so,
war
like,
of 1812.
this is the result. Like, this is what happens though when I think as the post-war liberal international order collapses, and Trump is eager, I think, to bring about that collapse. Is that we're now back to kind of old school power politics, and Trump recognizes that historically the great powers have a backyard. They have a sphere of influence, and they get to do what they want in that sphere of influence. Ukraine is in Russia's sphere of influence. Taiwan is in China's, and guess what? We're in America's.
They can already do whatever they like up here anyway.
Yeah.
So built the Alaska Highway. They got the Jew line. They do what they need to do.
Okay, well, that was enough speculative
but it was fun.
craziness for today. Let's see what happens. Well, we have the break coming up, so let's see if the Stars and Stripes are flying over Ottawa by January. Okay, let's go to our parting shots. Let's start with you, Nigel.
So now that Mr. Morgan there has stolen me, it occurs to me to remark that much as we feel sorry for Chrystia Freeland, in as much as we feel sorry for any woman who has been outrageously treated by a cad, she still was not actually the best finance minister that we have ever had. And quite frankly, her presiding over endless deficits that have taken our accumulated deficit all the way to $1.2 trillion, plus another $60 billion under her own signature here. Maybe Trump was right. Maybe she wasn't so great. Good riddance.
She won't be missed, as he says.
She won't be missed.
Just kind of further to what Nigel was saying, I don't want to get, with what's lost in the mix of this insane news cycle. We have a $62 billion deficit. Our debt servicing charges are over $52 billion a year. Now, that's money flushed down the toilet. I worked that out. if you take it just per taxpayer, $1,700 per person per year just to service the debt now. If you're having trouble making ends meet, well, there's $100 and some a month per person working in your household that's
Paying the interest.
going to nothing. No healthcare, no daycare, none of that stuff. Don't lose the numbers while all this political intrigue goes on.
Hey, keep in mind, that's just the federal debt.
Oh, yeah.
That's not including the provinces. And
No, I could go a lot deeper.
All right. Well, my parting shot is the measures that the Alberta government is taking in response to Trump. Alberta's taken a very different approach than the Fed. Well, the Feds have had no approach, essentially. They're caught chasing their own tails with their own games. But then you've got Ontario Premier Doug Ford promising trade war with America. Ooh, they're so afraid. Yeah, Ontario does export energy, but it also imports a lot of energy. It's actually not a particularly large energy exporter. Doesn't really have much to say. So Alberta's taken a more conciliatory approach. I'm not sure there is a good approach, but I think at least in Alberta's case, that's probably best for Alberta because we do export a lot, and if we can't, we're toast. So Alberta has gone ahead and put forward $20-odd million into essentially setting up our own border patrol, particularly mostly along the Montana border there. I think, what is it, a 10-kilometer, is a 5 or 10-kilometer zone?
2 kilometers.
2
back from
kilometers
the
deep.
border to be
Yeah.
patrol. Yes.
I mean, there's not a lot there. Corey, you've worked along there. I've been along there. There's just some corn and dirt roads and the odd kid flying around in a Mustang.
Pretty bleak down there.
Yeah, there's not much there. But Alberta setting up its own border patrol and whatnot, and that seems to have been pretty well received in the United States. My only problem is that this shouldn't be the job of the Alberta sheriffs. This should be the job of the Rat Patrol. We've already got the Alberta Rat Patrol that already patrols the BC, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba borders, looking for vermin to come in past our borders, and they're very efficient at exterminating them. So I just think we should have given the Rat Patrol some missile drones to patrol the borders with. I think that would have been a bit more efficient.
We're more fitting anyway.
See, I'm living in a fever dream today. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank all of you for joining us on the pipeline today. Remember, if you're not a member of the Western Standard, you really should be supporting one of the only independent media left in Canada not taking the Justin Trudeau's federal media bailout subsidies. We exist because of people like you that are willing to pay for real independent journalism. Go to westernstandard.news right now, click on subscribe. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year for unlimited access to get past that pesky paywall. Thank you very much for joining us. Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year.